What if the moment you got down on one knee thinking it was love was actually just you trying to bury the truth that your heart already belonged to someone else? I always thought the night you get down on one knee and ask someone to marry you is supposed to be one of the happiest, most heartfelt moments of your life, but nothing prepared me for how hollow it would feel when I realized I was just the backup plan, not the one he truly wanted. From the moment I met Jess, there was something in her that pulled me in. This mix of quiet strength and lingering sadness that made her feel like a mystery I wanted to solve. We met at a mutual friend's party, the kind where everyone's either glued to their phone or pretending they're too cool to talk, and she was sitting on the armrest of a couch, laughing at something nobody else was paying attention to. I wasn't in the best headspace myself, just got out of a long and painful breakup a few months before, and I wasn't looking for anything serious. But then Jess smiled at me. It wasn't the kind of smile people give when they're flirting or trying to get something. It was simple, soft, and disarming. We talked for a while that night, about everything from old video games to why neither of us really trusted horoscopes. And by the end of it, I had her number in my phone under the name, Maybe. The irony doesn't escape me now. For a while, things with her were simple, slow. She texted me first more than I did her, which I appreciated because I didn't really know what I wanted yet. But she was patient, showing up for weekend visits and slowly becoming a part of my routine in ways I never expected. She laughed at my dumb jokes, brought me homemade banana bread like it was normal, and never made me feel like I had to be anything more than who I was. But no matter how good it got with Jess, there was always this shadow in the room. Emily. Emily was the girl I dated for 2 years back when I was still figuring out who I was. She was loud, opinionated, beautiful in a way that made you stop mid-sentence. And when she ended things with me, she told me it was because I had no backbone. She said I let people walk all over me, that I didn't know how to fight for the things I cared about. And maybe she was right. I remember standing there as she packed her things and left, and I didn't say a word. Not one damn word. I told Jess about her in bits and pieces, never the whole truth. I painted Emily as someone from the past who no longer mattered, even though part of me still woke up sometimes thinking about what I could have said to make her stay. When Emily cut contact 2 years ago, it felt like a knife to the gut, but I convinced myself it was for the best. Jess never pried, never pushed, even when I accidentally let it slip how Emily used to say things that still echoed in my head. Stuff like, never settle for less than you deserve, or, people only settle when they're afraid of being alone. Jess would give me a look then, one I never fully understood, and changed the subject. But things started to spiral the night I found out Emily got engaged. It was 3 a.m., and Jess was asleep next to me. I was scrolling through Facebook when her post popped up. Emily, radiant as ever, flashing a diamond ring on her finger and standing beside some guy who looked like he had everything I didn't. I don't remember crying, not at first. Just this wave of emptiness that came over me so strong I thought it might crush me. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I was with Jess now. She loved me, she supported me, and we were building a life together. But the next night, I found myself looking at Emily's profile again. And the night after that. Sometimes I'd lie and say I was just stressed from work. But Jess could hear me in the bathroom, sniffling behind the door like some broken thing. She asked me once, gently, if I was okay, and I told her I'd been thinking about my childhood dog. That was the first lie. I didn't mean to string her along. I didn't mean to make her feel like she was competing with a ghost. But the truth is, I never stopped wondering what might have been if Emily had just given me one more chance. Jess was here, warm and real, and she deserved better than my broken heart. But I couldn't seem to shake the feeling that I had unfinished business. I tried to pretend everything was fine, made her breakfast, kissed her goodbye, laughed at her corny jokes like I used to. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's hand in someone else's. And when Jess finally asked me, straight up, if I still loved her, I said no, because that's what I wanted to believe. But what I didn't say, what I couldn't admit even to myself yet, was that I was already planning something I knew would change everything. Something reckless. Something desperate. Something that would make Jess realize she was never my first choice, and maybe never my real choice at all. I don't know if anyone ever proposes out of guilt, but if they do, then that morning was a textbook case of a man trying to rewrite the story after realizing he might have just ruined the ending. Jess was standing by the stove, flipping pancakes with her hair tied up in that lazy bun she always wore when she didn't feel like trying but still looked better than anyone I'd ever known. She smiled when she saw me walking in, said something about how I finally decided to wake up, but I barely heard her. I was holding a ring. Not just any ring. A ring I'd bought 3 weeks earlier on impulse on one of those nights where I couldn't sleep and told myself proposing would fix everything, make me forget the past, make Jess feel secure, make me feel like I'd chosen my life rather than just letting it happen to me. She turned around and I put the box on the table. I didn't say anything at first. I just nodded toward it like that made sense. Jess blinked at me, confused, her eyes flicking from my face to the box and back again, like maybe she thought I was messing with her. I wasn't on one knee. I didn't give a speech. I didn't even call her by name. I just stood there and waited. She opened the box slowly, her hands trembling a little, and when she saw the ring, her lips parted like she was about to say something, maybe something beautiful, maybe something tragic, but I jumped the gun and said, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. The lie rolled out easy. Too easy. She stared at me for what felt like forever. And then the smile came, one of those small, uncertain ones, like she didn't quite believe it was happening. But before she could answer, I saw it in her eyes. Doubt. Not about the ring. Not about the idea of marrying me. No, it was something deeper, something that said she could feel this wasn't real. Jess wasn't dumb. She'd seen the way I'd been acting, my distance, my late nights, my strange excuses. She may not have known what it all meant, but in that moment I think she understood the worst part. That I was asking because I had nothing else to give. She whispered, why now? And I froze. Because I didn't have a good answer. Not one that wouldn't shatter her. I wanted to say because I saw Emily's engagement and it felt like my world collapsed. I wanted to say because I'm scared of being alone, because you're the one who stayed, because I owe you something for all the love you've given me that I never really earned. But instead I said because it's time. Time. Like love was a box on some to-do list. She didn't cry. Jess didn't do that kind of thing unless she was really hurting. But she sat down slowly, staring at that ring like it might tell her a story that made more sense than mine. Then she looked up and said, where were you yesterday? And that was when the bottom dropped out. I hadn't thought she'd noticed. I left early, turned my phone off, spent the day alone trying to convince myself that I didn't care what Emily was doing anymore. That night I drove to the edge of town, parked outside a coffee shop she used to love, just in case she might walk by even though I knew she didn't live here anymore. Jess waited for an answer and I gave her silence. She stood up, pushed the box across the table, and said, you're not over her, are you? That question hit harder than any slap could have. It wasn't angry. It was tired. Wounded. Like she already knew the truth but needed me to say it out loud to give herself permission to walk away. I wanted to lie. God, I did. But all I said was, I don't know. That was the last real thing I ever said to her. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the ring. She just walked out the door, barefoot, because she'd kicked off her slippers while making breakfast, and I sat there like a fool, staring at 2 pancakes burning on the skillet, wondering how I'd let the best thing in my life slip through my fingers while chasing a ghost. That night, I sat on the couch in the dark again, same as I had those nights I cried over Emily's engagement. But this time, I wasn't crying over what I lost in the past. I was crying over what I just destroyed in the present. And I knew with a sick feeling in my chest that I wasn't done messing things up yet. Because the next step I took, it was going to cross a line I could never come back from. You ever make a decision so impulsive, so desperate, that even as you're doing it, your brain's screaming at you to stop, but you don't? That was me the morning after Jess left. The apartment was dead quiet, and I was sitting on the floor next to that ring box like it might still be holding the future I just watched walk out the door. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I just opened my laptop, pulled up Emily's name, and stared at our last message thread. It had been months since we spoke. The last time she shut me down cold, told me we were just friends, told me she'd moved on. But I still had that word doc saved on my computer, the one where I poured my heart out like some hopeless romantic in a cheesy movie, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd read it again and feel what I felt. But she never did. She'd made her choice. Still, I couldn't let go. So I did something that, in hindsight, made no sense at all. I booked a flight. To New York City. I knew where she worked. A mutual friend had mentioned it once in passing, probably thinking it was harmless. But it stuck with me, and in that moment, it became my lifeline. If I could just see her, talk to her, explain everything I couldn't say in a message, maybe I'd find closure. Or maybe I'd make the biggest mistake of my life. When I got there, I didn't even go to a hotel. I took a cab straight to the office building she worked at, planted myself across the street at a little cafe, and waited. Hours passed. I sipped coffee I didn't taste, ignored the barista's looks, watched every woman coming and going like a hawk. I must have looked like a creep, honestly. And then, around 4 p.m., there she was. Emily. God, she hadn't changed. Maybe a little more polished, a little more distant, but still the same woman who once told me I could be more if I just learned how to stand up for myself. My heart pounded like I was 18 again. I stood up, took a deep breath, and crossed the street. She didn't see me at first. I called her name, and when she turned around, her face twisted, not in joy, not in anger, but confusion. And then realization. What are you doing here? She asked, not warmly, not coldly, just shocked. I needed to see you, I said, trying to sound confident. I wasn't. Her eyes darted around like she was trying to figure out if she was being filmed. This isn't okay, she said. You can't just show up like this. I just need 5 minutes. No, she replied instantly. No, you don't. I tried to explain that things fell apart, that Jess left, that I never stopped thinking about her. I told her I still loved her, that I'd always believed we'd end up together. That's when she stepped back. You need to leave, she said, her voice sharp now. You had your chance. You made your choices. I made mine. And this? This is not okay. I stood there, stunned, as she turned and walked away. Just like that. Like all those years meant nothing. Like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. That night I wandered the city in a daze, no hotel, no plan, no one to call. I slept on a bench in Central Park like some lost soul with nowhere to go, clutching my phone like it could undo what I'd done. The next day I flew back home. Back to the empty apartment, the cold bed, and a voicemail from Jess's dad telling me she'd moved out. She didn't leave a note. She didn't take the ring. But she did take everything else, the memories, the laughter, the part of me that almost learned to love someone again. I thought chasing Emily would give me answers. All it gave me was silence. And I knew deep down that this time, I deserved it. Coming back to that apartment felt like stepping into a version of my life that had already moved on without me, like the walls had absorbed the last few years, then quietly decided to let them go. Jess was gone. Her scent wasn't on the pillows anymore, the bathroom shelf was half empty, and the little mug she always used for tea sat on the counter, clean and untouched, like she left it behind on purpose. The ring box was still on the table, unopened, the proposal unanswered. It hit me then how final this all was. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just final. I didn't call her. Didn't text. I wanted to, God knows I did, but what was I even going to say? Hey, sorry I was crying over another woman for weeks, ignored your pain, lied to your face, and then tried to lock you down with a ring just so I wouldn't feel like a failure? No message fixes that. So I sat in the silence for a while. Days, maybe? I couldn't tell anymore. Ate when I remembered. Showered when I couldn't stand my own reflection. Work became background noise. My life turned grayscale. But then something strange happened. One by one, I started hearing from people. Not friends, exactly. Mutual acquaintances. People who weren't really on my side or her side, just kind of floating somewhere in the middle. One text said, "Bro, what happened? Jess moved out? She okay?" Another said, "She told my sister you proposed. Is that true? After everything?" And then came the one that made my stomach drop. "She found that document, didn't she?" The document. That damn letter I wrote to Emily. I had forgotten I even saved it, tucked away in some obscure folder on my laptop like it wouldn't eventually surface, like I wouldn't slip up and leave it behind like breadcrumbs. She must have read it while I was gone. Every word. Every pathetic, desperate confession. She must have read the part where I told Emily that no one would ever understand me the way she did. That even though I loved Jess, I loved Emily different, deeper, more real. That I believed in some parallel world we were still meant to end up together. That letter was never supposed to be seen. It wasn't even supposed to mean anything. Just a way to exhale all the stuff I couldn't carry anymore. But Jess had read it. And once she did, there was no going back. A week passed before I finally got the courage to send her a message. Just one line. "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. So I sent another. "You deserve better." I was selfish. I see that now. Still nothing. By now I wasn't trying to get her back. I just wanted to say the things I should have said when she was still within arm's reach. But silence was all I got. Then I heard from a friend of hers, someone I barely knew. She told me Jess had moved back in with her dad temporarily, that she was safe, but that she didn't want to hear from me. Not now, maybe not ever. That she was trying to rebuild and I was part of what broke her. That phrase stuck with me, part of what broke her. Because it wasn't just Emily. It wasn't just that document. It was the months of pretending. The nights she heard me crying and never got a real answer. The conversations she initiated that I deflected with half-truths and cowardice. I wasn't her partner. I was her placeholder. And she knew it before I did. After that, the silence between us became something sacred. Like we both knew it had to stay untouched or it would start bleeding all over again. I stopped reaching out. Started letting her heal. But healing didn't come easy for me. Because now, every time I see a photo of a couple smiling, or hear someone talk about their fiancé, or walk past a girl wearing a bun and holding a tea mug, I think of Jess. Not in a wishful way. Not in a hopeful way. But in that forever regret kind of way. That echo of something you lost because you were too busy chasing what was already gone. There's a strange kind of grief that sets in when you lose someone who's still out there, still breathing, still living their life, still shopping for groceries or laughing at dumb memes, but they've just cut you out. No death, no car crash, no final act, just a quiet, merciless goodbye that leaves you wide awake at 3 a.m. wondering how you became a stranger to someone who used to fall asleep in your arms. And for me, that grief came with a second punch I never saw coming, realizing Jess wasn't the only one who saw the writing on the wall long before I did. It started with a group chat that used to be half banter, half dumb memes, and occasionally fantasy football drama. I hadn't checked it in days, not since the whole mess blew up. When I finally opened it, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. A meme someone had sent of a burning dumpster rolling down a flooded street, captioned, "When you propose to one girl while mourning another." Below it. Damn, man. For real though, that was cold. And then one of my oldest friends, Chris, wrote something that cut deeper than any of the jokes. "We all saw it. We just hoped you'd wake up before it was too late." I stared at that message for a long time. We all saw it. All those times we were out and Jess was trying to be her usual calm, collected self while I brought up Emily for the 100th time. All those get-togethers where I'd talk about the good old days like they were some sacred text, while Jess sat quietly with that faint smile she wore when she didn't want to show how much it hurt. My friends noticed. Hell, even her friends noticed. It was obvious to everyone but me. I always thought I was doing a good job of hiding it. Thought my silence, my avoidance, my occasional late-night spirals were mine alone. But people saw. They saw the way I still said her name like it meant something, how I'd referenced things Emily used to say in conversations like I was quoting scripture. I never meant to make Jess feel like she was competing with a ghost. But she was. And now I was the one haunted. Later that week, Chris called me not to yell, not to shame me, but just to talk. We hadn't really had a one-on-one conversation in a while. He'd always been closer with Jess than most of my friends, and I think deep down, I resented that. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked him. Back when I could have fixed it? His voice was quiet. "Because you wouldn't have listened. You were too wrapped up in your own version of the past. No one could get through to you, not even her." I didn't argue. Because he was right. He told me Jess had reached out to a few people after she moved out. Not to vent. Not to trash me. Just to ask if it made sense, if she was wrong for finally walking away. And one by one, they told her she wasn't. "She didn't hate you," Chris said. "She just realized she was never going to be enough for someone still chasing a what-if." The phrase lodged itself in my chest like shrapnel, a what-if. That's all Emily ever was. But I built her up so high, so perfect in memory that I never gave Jess a fair chance. I treated the present like a waiting room and just like the nurse, someone there to keep me calm until the doctor finally called me in. That realization? It wrecked me. Because Jess had done everything right. She'd shown up. She'd been patient. She'd offered me love without demands, support without judgment. And I spent 3 years letting her hold a space in my life that was never fully hers to begin with. A few days later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was the ring. The same one I'd placed on the table that morning. She hadn't even taken it with her when she left, but somehow she'd held onto it long enough to send it back. There was no note. No explanation. Just the ring. Still pristine. Still shining. Still empty. And I knew then there was no salvaging this. No apology long enough, no grand gesture big enough. I hadn't just lost her. I had erased her trust. Her hope. Her belief in us. And all I had left was a ring that never found a finger and a silence that would probably last the rest of my life. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was realizing that the silence had become her peace. You ever sit in a place so quiet it almost rings in your ears? That's what the apartment became. I'd wake up, no texts. Go to sleep, no missed calls. Weekends came and went. Nobody knocking on the door. Nobody asking how I was holding up. I guess that's what happens when you break something that was built out of trust. You lose your right to check on the damage. But here's the ugly truth I hadn't admitted even to myself, not at first. I wasn't done. I couldn't let go. And that's when desperation started whispering dumb ideas into my ear. I started reaching out to our mutual friends. Not the ones who had already written me off, but the ones who hovered in the middle. The ones who liked Jess, respected her, but still answered when I called. I tried being subtle at first. Casual check-ins, hey, just wondering how Jess is doing, like I wasn't drowning in guilt. But subtle doesn't work when you've already lit the bridge on fire. People were polite, but guarded. Most of them didn't want to get involved. A few even told me straight up, man, you need to let her heal. And then came the worst one. A friend, we'll call her Mel, she was close with Jess, closer than I remembered. She called me one night out of the blue, voice tight, angry. You don't get to sniff around now, she said. You made her feel like she was holding the door open while you stared down the street hoping someone else would show up. I didn't argue. Couldn't. But then she told me something I wasn't ready for. She's doing better now. She's been going out working, even started therapy. You're not the main character anymore, so stop acting like the story's still about you. That one hit hard. Because she was right. I had made myself the center of every scene, the victim of a love triangle where the villain was circumstance. But the truth was messier than that. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't even the hero. I was just a guy who thought loving someone once gave me the right to fumble someone else's heart. Still, I didn't stop. I told myself I just wanted closure. Just 5 minutes to explain. Just one moment to say, I never meant to hurt you. But I knew that wasn't the whole truth. What I really wanted was redemption. The kind of redemption that only comes when the person you wronged looks at you and says, it's okay. I understand. But she didn't know me that. And the more I pushed, the more obvious it became I wasn't helping her. I was haunting her. Then I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I tried to contact her directly. One night, midnight, with the TV on mute and the walls closing in, I typed out this long, rambling message. Apologies. Regrets. Admissions. Things I should have said when we were still in the same room. I poured it all out. And right before I hit send, something stopped me. It wasn't guilt. It was her face, her real, living, breathing face in my memory. Sitting across from me at that kitchen table, ring box between us, asking, why now? I realized the most respectful thing I could do was not send it. To let her be. To stop clinging to the idea that closure had to come from her. Because closure doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like accepting the silence, learning to live with the unanswered questions, and choosing not to make the wound any deeper than it already is. So I deleted the message. Turned off my phone. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't cry. Not because I was healed, but because I finally understood that healing her meant letting her go completely. Even if that meant I'd never get another word. Even if the last thing she ever heard from me was a lie. Grief has a funny way of mutating. It doesn't just sit there like a brick on your chest, it shifts shape. One day it's anger. The next it's numbness. Sometimes it masquerades as acceptance, tricking you into thinking you're finally over it, and then one afternoon a song comes on or a smell hits you and suddenly you're right back in the thick of it, drowning all over again. That's where I was about 3 months after Jess left. I had stopped checking her social media, well, mostly. I deleted her contact, cleared out our texts, boxed up the little things she left behind. But every once in a while, I'd still catch myself walking into the grocery store and reaching for that weird oat milk she liked, before remembering I didn't need it anymore. I was starting to live without her. Or at least, pretending well enough. And that's when Emily came back. Not in person. Not even with a call. It was a message, just a plain, 2-sentence email sent to my work account of all places. Heard you flew out here a few months back. That was insane. Hope you're doing okay. It felt like someone turned the volume back up in my life. I read the message probably 30 times before I even thought about replying. I kept asking myself what she wanted. Was it pity? Was it curiosity? Was she just checking to see how badly I'd unraveled? But I couldn't resist. I wrote back. Wasn't my proudest moment. Just needed to see you one last time. I'm not okay. But I'm getting there. She responded 2 days later. And just like that, a conversation was born. At first, it was surface level. Updates. Little life things. She was still engaged, wedding date set, venue picked. She didn't mention the day I showed up outside her office. I didn't press. But the more we talked, the more it started to feel like the old days, like we were slipping into familiar rhythms that had no place in either of our current lives. She asked how Jess was. I paused so long before replying that my email draft auto-saved 4 times. She left. I don't blame her. She deserved better than what I gave. Emily's reply came fast. Yeah, she did. That one stung more than I thought it would. Because even though I'd finally said it out loud, it felt different hearing it from her. Like some final verdict had been delivered. I had fumbled one relationship chasing closure from another, and now both doors were closed and I was the one who locked them. Still, I kept the emails going. It was like scratching at a scab just to see if it still hurt. We talked about everything but what mattered, never revisiting what I said in that document she read, never discussing what it meant that I showed up at her job like some sad movie character. Until one night, she said this. I used to think you were the guy I'd end up with. But part of me always knew you needed to lose everything before you'd see what you really had. That was it. That was the moment I knew this story wasn't just about Jess. It was about me, my pattern of holding onto people like lifelines, confusing nostalgia with love, refusing to accept that just because someone once made you feel seen doesn't mean they're your forever. Emily was never going to be mine again. Jess had already been mine, and I let her slip away, trying to relive something that was never meant to come back. After that message, I stopped replying. I didn't block her. Didn't send a goodbye. I just ended it. Not out of spite, but because I realized if I kept that door open, I'd never stop looking back. And maybe the only way to truly start over was to face forward for once, even if the road ahead was nothing but silence. Because the truth is, I wasn't looking for love anymore. I was just trying to forgive the version of myself who lost it all chasing ghosts. They say time heals everything, but I don't buy that, not entirely. Time just gives you distance, and distance gives you perspective. What you do with that perspective, that's where the real healing starts. It had been nearly 6 months since Jess left when I saw her again. It wasn't planned. Wasn't some dramatic, slow-motion reunion in the rain. It was a random afternoon at a bookstore downtown, the kind with creaky wood floors and jazz playing too low to recognize. I was there grabbing a gift for my sister's birthday, flipping through some poetry book I wouldn't have touched a year ago. And then I looked up. There she was. Jess. Hair a little longer, darker at the ends. Wearing the soft green sweater I'd never seen before. She didn't see me at first. She was laughing with someone. A guy, maybe a friend, maybe more. I couldn't tell. Didn't need to. Because in that moment I saw something I hadn't seen in her in years. Light. She looked alive. Not the tired, careful version of herself I had spent so long taking for granted, but someone free, someone rebuilding. Someone who finally stopped waiting for the guy who couldn't let go of his past. She eventually noticed me. Our eyes met across the shelves, and for a second the whole room went quiet. She didn't smile. She didn't frown either. Just this neutral, calm look that said more than any text or letter ever could. I gave her a small nod, just enough to say, hey, but not enough to ask for anything more. She held my gaze for a beat, then returned the nod, polite, distant, peaceful. And then she turned back to her friend. That was it. No words. No drama. Just the final thread quietly unraveling between us. I left the store without buying anything. Walked a few blocks before sitting down on a bench and just letting it all catch up. The regret. The clarity. The weight of every moment I could have chosen better and didn't. And I thought about something she said once, something I hadn't remembered until that moment. Back in the early days, during one of our first long car rides together, she told me, I don't care if love is messy. I just want it to be honest. I wasn't honest. Not with her. Not with myself. And I paid the price. But now sitting there under a fading sky, I realized something. This wasn't a punishment. It was a lesson. A brutal, necessary, soul-cracking lesson. You don't get to keep love just because you need it. You keep it by earning it every day in the way you show up, the way you listen, the way you choose someone fully, and not just because the person you really wanted walked away. Jess had been that someone. She showed up. She loved me completely. And I failed to do the same. But she's out there now healing, growing, laughing again. And me? I'm learning how to live with the echo of her footsteps fading down the hallway we used to share. No more grand gestures. No more desperate emails. No more pretending. Just me, living with what I lost. And slowly learning how to be the kind of man who never lets it happen again.